These are the days. These are the days why I do what I do. Every one of us should be celebrating today. You should be celebrating. Should be like, you should look at this like it's Christmas. Why? Because every single lie you were told in these tough times, the early 2020s, right, they were tough. And most people will say, oh yeah, living through COVID, that was tough. Pfft, that was nothing. What was tough was every major institution we have, from the media to academia to your politicians to the houses to the courts, lied to you, and all of it got exposed yesterday. Yes, the big story was the Southern Poverty Law Center got indicted, but it's a way bigger story than that, way bigger. In fact, the tentpole hoax. I'm going to refer a lot today in this podcast, in this live stream, to Scott Adams. You've heard me talk about him a lot. And boy, I wish he was alive today to talk about this, because he was one of the main guys. You know, a few people were responsible for this, but exposing what he called the tentpole hoax of the Democrats from the past few years. In fact, it was the reason. You'll hear here in just a couple of minutes. It was the reason why Joe Biden says he decided to run. The tentpole hoax was the fine people hoax. It was everything the Democrats based their campaign against Trump and conservatives and MAGA and regular Americans too on. And it was all a lie. And now we know it was all funded by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It's unbelievable what's gotten exposed. Now, you could look at this one of two ways. You could look at this and say, this is just scary stuff that's happening, that this is really going on. No, you have to look at it this way. For a long time now, I've seen the connection between mental toughness and the right mindset and being a conservative, true American patriot, because that's what you need to see through all this stuff. And these are the days, like I said, you should celebrate. We're going to get into all of this, because this is truly, I've said this a lot over the past few years. I told you, this is an amazing time to be alive. This is one of the most impactful things to happen in American history, this getting exposed. They're all running. It's amazing. That, and well, you're going to have to give me some time to pat myself on the shoulder on this one. I told you I'm having a day. I called to the exact time and word Senator Chris Murphy's so-called apology yesterday for rooting for Iran. I called it. You can look at the timestamp on X. Just look up at Wicked Bill Adams. It's all right there. I time-stamped it. I called exactly what this weasel was going to do. We'll get into that, too. Oh, and there's a little bit. Most people are all upset today about Virginia gerrymandering it so that Republicans can never win again now. There's better things happening. Trust me. We'll get into that, too. First and foremost, thanks for finding me, Wicked Radio, the live stream, and the replay on X, YouTube, Facebook, and then the audio podcast where most of you find me, wherever you like to get those. Let's get right to it. Before we get into the fine people hoax collapsing, and waited for this day. A lot of us have for years. Here you go. I'm going to brag. I'm going to brag about this. The story from Senator Chris Murphy, which I didn't even get into yesterday because it all kind of like developed right when we were wrapping up the live stream at about 8:30 a.m. But you know what happened. It started off with this. By the way, the background being over the weekend, I did talk about this, Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut. And by the way, Connecticut, what the hell are you doing putting him in office? He was in Spain disparaging our country and our president. That was the first part of it. Then we also know from great reporter Molly Hemingway, back in 2020, he had met with Iranian officials. Very interesting. And this is one of the main people, senators. He's on the Foreign Relations Committee, by the way, for now. One of the main people, disparaging Operation Epic Fury. Got to ask yourself why. So this is what started off the whole thing. On Thursday, he, quote, posted this from a news site, a guy named Ali Vaez. And by the way, all of this turned out to be and was exposed as fake news. This was Iranian propaganda. That didn't stop Senator Chris Murphy from reposting it and commenting on it. The fake news was at least 26 Iranian shadow fleet vessels bypass U.S. blockade. Chris Murphy, U.S. Senator Chris Murphy, responds by saying, awesome. Awesome. Foreign Relations Committee. United States Senator. Okay. Well, now I'm going to go in real time to X. I'm going to look up an account called @WickedBillAdams. Who is that? Oh, that's me. Okay, yeah. I told you I was bragging. I mean, I have to today. I called it. You can look it up on your own, and I encourage you to do so exactly. So in response to the apology, a guy named Kurt Schleister, who's a great follow on X, he said, prediction. At first, we won't see anything from this in the New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. Then they'll ignore it. They'll explain it away, blah, 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 blah. I said, and by the way, the time I said this was 9:54 a.m. yesterday on April 21st. This was my post. Agree, but here's a prediction of my own. Murphy will come out and say awesome was meant sarcastically and that he'd never root against America. I posted that at 9:54. Here's what happened in real time. At 10:30 a.m., this news comes out. Chris Murphy's post. Okay, Twitter, and he still calls it Twitter, I guess. I can't believe I need to clarify this, but obviously Trump's bungled mismanagement of this war is not awesome. As I have said a million times here, it's a disaster and should end the war immediately. My tweet was something called Sarcasm. That was posted at 10:24 a.m. Yes, I freaking called it. I'm not the best at predictions, but boy, I nailed that one. That freaking weasel completely exposed and just explains it away. I didn't call it awesome. I also didn't disparage our country over in Spain. No, not at all. If the Republicans, and we know they don't, but if they had any balls whatsoever, this guy would be absolutely kicked out of the halls of Congress. He certainly would be off any foreign relations committee or having anything to do with Iran. That's the way it should be. Will it? I don't know. But it's an opportunity, and that's the good news for Republicans to kick that guy out. But I think the Republicans are too wimpy to do anything about it. I really do. As we know, as we just saw in Virginia last night, they're too wimpy to do anything. They like to lose. I think Republicans and the rhinos have a losing problem. So we'll see what happens with him. But let's get to the real news. Not just an indictment, not just something from the Department of Justice. As I said before, and this does get kind of heavy, I understand that, but it's heavy and it's complicated and it's confusing by design. But all you need to know is everything the Democrats, specifically Joe Biden, ran on just fell apart last night. It is called the Fine People Hoax. For this, we have to go back to Charlottesville, 2017, Charlottesville, Virginia. Remember the Unite the Right rally? And there was a tragedy and a couple of people died, and the Democrats used that to say that Trump, called those neo-Nazis fine people, and they based the whole thing on that. All of that got exposed as a confirmed hoax, which we always knew before. Scott Adams and others were big in exposing all that. Not only that, now we know with this indictment who's behind it. It's a little long. It's worth it. I promise we'll take it in pieces. This is Todd Blanche, acting attorney general. By the way, I think I'd like to see this guy as the permanent attorney general with the work he's getting done. He and FBI Director Kash Patel making the announcement yesterday, the Southern Poverty Law Center, a so-called nonprofit that has dedicated its entire mission to fighting white supremacy. Remember right around 2017, all of a sudden you started hearing that everywhere? White supremacy is the greatest threat to America. White supremacy, the alt-right, all this crap. It was all crap. You felt it. You said, why am I hearing about the Klan? Why am I hearing about white supremacy? I haven't heard that term since the 70s when I was a child. White supremacy? What are you talking about? You know why it didn't make sense? You know why it didn't jive with your mind? Because it was all made up. Sure, it's out there. Not to the extent that they were saying. And it gets worse. They were creating it. We got to go for the first explanation to the actual press conference yesterday. Again, we'll take it in pieces. Absolutely unbelievable.
Good afternoon. Today, a few minutes ago, in the Middle District of Alabama, a grand jury returned an 11-count indictment charging the Southern Poverty Law Center with 6 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering. According to the charges in the indictment, the SPLC is a nonprofit entity that purports to fight white supremacy and racial hatred by reporting on extremist groups and conducting research to inform law enforcement groups with the goal of dismantling these groups.
First and foremost, that'd be pretty bad, right? A big, and we've all heard of it, the SPLC, this nonprofit, and they're fighting hate, all this other stuff, and they're charged and they're indicted with all kinds of monetary fraud, right? That right there would be bad. Until he gets into how they manufactured it and created it. This was their business model.
As the indictment describes, the SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred. The indictment describes this conduct in detail, but one troubling example is that the SPLC was paying a member of the leadership group that planned the Unite the Right protest in Charlottesville, Virginia in 2017 that resulted in the death of one person and injured dozens more.
Hold on. You're saying the Southern Poverty Law Center, this supposed nonprofit that has dedicated itself to stopping this white hate, the white supremacy, the alt-right, they were behind the rally that they used. They created it to use this giant hoax to go after Trump supporters, regular Americans, independents, and everybody else that wasn't a Democrat. This is exactly what he just said, because in this indictment, they realized and they found all the evidence they need to show that they created the whole thing.
This particular person being paid by the SPLC allegedly received approximately $270,000 over the course of 8 years. In total, according to the indictment, between 2014 and 2023, SPLC paid at least $3 million to 8 individuals at least. These individuals were affiliated with the Ku Klux Klan, United Klans of America, National Socialist Movement, Aryan Nations Affiliated Sadistic Souls Motorcycle Club,
God.
the Nationalist Socialist Party of America, Nazis, and the American Front.
Hold on. The Southern Poverty Law Center was paying the Klan, organized the Unite the Right rally. There again, the formation, the event that kicked off the tentpole hoax, the Fine People hoax, and the United Front. That might be familiar to you. These are the D-bags that have marched around every once in a while. You'd see their rally. They're all, first of all, masked, and they were carrying Confederate flags, and they were claiming to be Trump supporters, and they were all like in shape, clearly like feds, obviously, because you've never had a group of Trump supporters that, I'm sorry, are in that kind of shape and wear masks. It just never, everybody saw right through that. But they were also funded by this fraudulent organization. He goes on.
Now, as the indictment lays out, after SPLC paid members of these extremist groups, it created work product that reported on these activities that the members participated in or contributed to. And to that end, it was doing the exact opposite of what it's told its donors it was doing.
They created hate. The Southern Poverty Law Center created all this and led to the Charlottesville hoax. After Todd Blanche got done, and by the way, again, I'll say it, that guy should be acting attorney general. Let's keep him in there. Just to clarify, Kash Patel got up there and he said a lot of the same thing, but again, kind of wrapped it all up.
What we're here today is to announce what the general just told you. The Southern Poverty Law Center, in a massive, sweeping indictment, has been charged with allegations of fraud and using the banking system to perpetrate that fraud. I just want to talk about a couple of brief things here.
The fraud, they get him on the fraud, but what revealed in all of this discovering was exactly what they created. Not just a front group, not just one of these NGOs that the Doge dudes and Nick Shirley have exposed all over the place, all over the country. No, this is even worse than that. Not only taking money as a nonprofit, which is what they're charged with, but also creating this hate that happened in the country. The early 2020s, leading from 2017 on, then through 2020s and all this other stuff, all this stuff that never made sense to you. Never made sense. America was built on racism and the hate and the alt-right and the white supremacy. None of it that really jived, because they were talking about this, but you lived your life and you reacted with people and you had friends of all different kinds of, racial groups. None of it really made sense. You know why it didn't make sense? Because it was all fake. It was all a hoax, every single bit of it, and it all just got exposed. Well, Todd Blanche goes to the press conference to Laura Ingraham on Fox last night, and he clarified again. And she asked a pretty good question. Are you telling me, she says, Charlottesville, the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, where all of this kicked off, all of it, which created the Fine People hoax, which we'll get into here in a second, you're telling me that they funded
What about
this?
Charlottesville and the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally? Were they involved in that?
Yes. So what we allege in the indictment and what the grand jury found is that one of the individuals that they paid was one of the folks who helped organize that terrible event. And so that
Why was it terrible? A couple of people died. It was terrible. It was violent. It was crazy. A car ran through the crowd. It was just awful. There were violence and all this other stuff, which is bad. I think everybody said, oh, that's bad. If you looked at the news reports back in 2017, you said, yeah, that's bad. Nobody wants to be associated with that. It was manufactured. Not only was it manufactured, yes, it gets worse. This is why it's so great. All of this got exposed last night. This is what they built the entire hoax on to get Trump to call him a neo-Nazi, to call him a Nazi, to call him a fascist, to call this alt-right and this white supremacy. It was all crap. CNN played a major, major part in this. So here's Trump's reaction to this. This is the basis of the Fine People hoax. This is another thing that Scott Adams and many others exposed, saying this was the most effective because they played it perfectly, but also the major hoax that divided this nation, and they actually created what we saw in the Biden administration. This is how they did it. Again, we'll take it in pieces. CNN enacted what we call a RUPAR. There's an editor at CNN called Aaron Rupar who edited this deceptively. They've been masters of the game at this forever. They cut out the part where Trump completely disassociated himself with, the neo-Nazis and the violent people and everybody else that's bad and the extremists. They only played and deceptively edited what has now come to become the Fine People hoax. Here's how it started and how it ended. And Don Lemon was the deliverer of this. This is what they used. This is why this was such a pivotal moment. This is what they used to divide this country, is exactly what happened and what we suffered through with Biden. This was all of it.
People that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did.
Those are the receipts. Why doesn't President Trump condemn racism? His own words and actions tell you why.
That was Don Lemon delivering the deceptively edited video that they put together at CNN. But let's face it, under order from the Democrats. What really happened? What did he really say? Or here's the truth.
He's a racist.
And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups, but not all of those people were neo-Nazis, believe me. Not all of those people were white supremacists.
But they didn't show that. Of course not. They edited it to make it look like he was the bad guy, and then they ran everything on that. Well, what are you talking about, Bill? That's just a video. They can't run everything. No. Never mistake it, because it's in Joe Biden's own words. This is what they based their entire presidential run on. He admitted it as such.
I ran for president in 2020 because of what I saw in Charlottesville in August of 2017. Extremists coming out of the woods, carrying torches, their veins bulging from their...
All of it was a lie and a hoax, and it was all coordinated. Now, as great as it is to have all of this exposed finally, I mean, we've all known, right? But now you have the proof that came out through this indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center. But now you know. Now, sadly, and I got to warn you about this, there are still people in your life, there are people out there that will forever, till they take their last dying breath, their last breath on earth, they will still believe the Fine People hoax. That's how effective it was that they based everything on. This is why the great Scott Adams and everybody else called this the tentpole hoax. They based everything else. This is the hoax upon which all the other hoaxes were built. All of them, all the other crap you heard during the whole Biden administration, and still the hoaxes you hear today. But Trump's a Nazi. He called them fine people. No, he didn't. Not in context. And you can talk to them till they're blue in the face, and there are still people that won't believe that because they are so twisted, and they still believe that sources like CNN are telling them the truth. But I'm telling you, it's great news. All of this got exposed. This is an amazing, amazing, amazing day. That Todd Blanche guy, got to keep him in there forever. All right, and then there's bad news. And then, you can choose to celebrate that, or you can be freaked out by it. There's two ways to go. This is why I always talk that the mindset has to be right for you to be a patriotic American. Mindset and that connection always have to be there. because you have to be mentally tough and you have to be smart. And the first step in that is to understand how the media lies to you. Once you see that and you're mentally prepared to actually handle it, you can see the truth and you spread the truth onto others. That's why I do what I do. It's exactly why. And it's all right there. 2 ways to go. You could freak out about all the headlines in Virginia last night because the Democrats gerrymandered exactly how they do it and all that. Yeah, fine, whatever. You knew that was coming. You knew it was coming. The opportunity is for Republicans to do it in other states. Are they tough enough to do it? I don't know. Probably not. They're too whippy. They like to lose. But the opportunity's there. Or you could look at this and understand that everything you were told was a lie and now the truth is finally coming out. That's what you should celebrate. It's all where you put your mind and your mindset. It's an amazing day. Unbelievable. I didn't expect that to come out. But it's a wild, wild time. Great things. And again, and this goes back to that mindset. You could freak out about all this stuff getting exposed and all these stories. So you could say, the corruption's already been there. But now the pushback and the fight is happening. These are great times. Great times. You should enjoy it. Hope it goes on. All right, thanks for finding me. I appreciate you. Wicked Radio live stream. Replay is on X, YouTube, Facebook. We're live every single day, by the way, at 8 a.m. Eastern Time on those same platforms. And the audio podcast, wherever you like to get them, that could be iHeart, Apple, Spotify. And they all have different requirements for you to understand when the next podcast episode is coming out. But follow, like, share, and all that good stuff, as you have. And I appreciate you so much for doing that. Celebrate today and have a wicked awesome Wednesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow.